Okay, everybody, let's talk about the moon. Not the version that you learned about in school, but the one that's been quietly sitting there waiting because the real question isn't how we went back. It's why now? Why this moment? Why this time? And what is the symbolism that's hidden right in front of our faces that most people aren't even noticing? Because when you look a little bit closer at the history and the patterns and even the names, you start to realize that this might be about a little bit more than just space. So today, we're going in. We're deep diving into the mysteries of the moon, and not your typical conspiracy theories either, just something a little bit different. What we've been told, what doesn't quite add up, and what this moment might actually be revealing. So lock it in. We're cleared for launch. All right, come on. Let's go. We're going to talk about the moon. Get your crap together and let's go right now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, people of Earth. It is I, Sheila Say, your fearless leader and your podcast host here on Earth School Radio. We're going to talk about the moon today. I'm excited. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing great. I'm feeling good. See this? If my tongue is blue or my teeth are blue, it's because I've decided I'm going to try this methylene blue. Done it a couple of times. I've been seeing a lot of good things about it online, and so I ordered it from Russell Brand, of all people. He has a company that's like health, wellness stuff. And yeah, Russ, I got your methylene blue from your company called Reborn. And so far, my brain functions much better when I'm drinking it. And so in order for me to keep a cohesive thought today, we're going to try this. So let me know in the comments if you have ever tried it, how it worked out for you, if you still do it, if anything. Let me know. Anyway, so it's been a few weeks since I've been able to do a podcast. I've been in Jacksonville at the Mayo Clinic getting some evaluations done for some joint stuff that I've been dealing with for a long time, and it was a success. They're freaking amazing. If you ever have an opportunity to be treated at the Mayo Clinic for any reason, they're just beyond. I can't even tell you. They're just amazing. So let's talk about it. We went back to the moon, and I knew that the launch was coming, but I hadn't thought about it. I was coming out of my doctor's appointment at Mayo Clinic, and my mom called, and she's like, "Are you going to go, to see the launch?" And I'm like, I don't know. So I did my little search on my chat GPT, and it said, yep, you'll be able to see it right from Jacksonville Beach. So I drove my happy ass to Jacksonville Beach, to a beautiful park, like a state park that's literally got beach access. And it's called Catherine Hanna Park. If you are from Florida and you live near there, you're very blessed. But I completely enjoyed myself that night. So I headed there, set up my chair. I had a great spot, figured out where to watch. I set my little compass to try to get it at my chair facing the right way so that I'd be able to see it. I was excited. I felt like a little kid again. I felt like I was about to witness something really important. I felt it. It was an energy in the air. And I'm standing there and I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these other people with their cameras ready. And I'm seeing little kids kind of, looking at the sky, scanning the sky. Where's it going to come from? And I was doing the same thing, and I was getting caught up in it. And, so I'm sitting there, I'm scanning the sky. And then, saying, when's it going to show up? When's it going to show up? And then it did. And in my excitement, I was trying to get it on my phone, but I was so caught up in the moment that the video's not that great. But I thought, you know what? Let me show it to you. So this is the mission back to the moon, Artemis 2. And this is what I captured. So let's take a look real quick. It's kind of goofy, but here we go.
Oh my gosh, I can't even freaking focus. I can't even freaking focus. There it is. There it is. It's behind that cloud.
Okay, and so you can see I was moved, right? I was feeling it. I saw this light moving across the sky with that trail behind it, and it was so far away, but at the same time, I just felt like, I don't know, it just felt so close, and I was just locked in on it, and then out of nowhere, I started crying. And it kind of caught me off guard, because I'm thinking, like, why in the world am I getting so emotional right now? It was a little weird. And then I was like, wait a minute. If you know me at all, you know that me crying at that situation was not really that weird at all. Because I'd be feeling all the feels all the time. So I just stood there and, I kind of let myself feel it. I kind of got into it because, I don't know, I just got into a place where, when I feel super strong emotions, I don't brush them off anymore. If something hits me like that, I want to know why. So I just started thinking about it and I let myself just kind of wander in thought. And I realized, I didn't really feel like that emotional because I was just watching this rocket launch. It was really what it represented more than anything. It was like one of those moments where I felt like I was um, at this threshold moment, like a choice point, like something in the timeline is shifting and I'm standing here watching it happen. And I kept thinking about all that's happened in the world since we were there the last time. I just kept getting this image of this archaic, like, rocket where these guys were just in these old-fashioned spacesuits and like we're going back finally. How weird is that it took us this long? And it gave me this like surge of like hopefulness and excitement. And I was thinking about, finally, we're going back and maybe they're going to do it right this time. And that's what kind of sent me down the rabbit hole this week because I started thinking, okay, this really feels different. It just felt like a tangible moment where, if I had to think about it, it's like, I felt like I was in this moment where it really was revealing itself like we're in the awakening. We're in the great awakening right now, right in the middle of it, to be honest. And, you know, I just felt this incredible, like, yes, I'm witnessing. And you know me, I always talk about New Earth because that's what we're creating every day with our thoughts, with our intentions, with our energy. And that's what it felt like. It felt like I was like on the threshold of just seeing another facet of New Earth just start to reveal itself like puzzle pieces in front of my face. So let's get into it because what I started to find is pretty interesting. Now, before we can even talk about Artemis, the new mission, and what's happening right now, we have to go back. We have to go back to the last time that we went to the moon because I don't think that we can understand this moment properly without looking at that moment. Okay, at least from the lens I'm looking at it through. So let's go back to 1969. And for a second, not just, the event itself, but let's feel the energy of that time because I think that that matters more than we realize. So let's go back to 1969. In those days, in the late 1960s, there was, when you think about humanity and how people just thought and operated, there was a center to everyone's reality. There were, 3 TV channels, ABC, CBS, NBC. There was the local newspaper people got most of their news from. There were some centralized magazines. There was Time and Life magazine, and most people, you know, whatever source of news that they were looking at, those all reported one story. And most people believed whatever they were told, whatever was reported. And on that summer day in 1969, when the Apollo mission took off, right? And then subsequently the moment when we watched the moon landing, the one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, or however it was phrased. In those moments, it was an estimated 650 million people watched that at the exact same time. It wasn't a broadcast. There was a shared reality. Everyone had to do it in that moment. There was no YouTube that you could log in after work to rewatch it. There was no on-demand replay. If it was replayed, it was on the local news. It was, a recount where you had to find a time to make time to look at it, People all over the world were huddled around their TV sets to watch these moments. And then after that, talking about that time era and what was going on with people, just like a few weeks later in August of that same year, Woodstock exploded onto the scene. It was a gathering unlike ever before, full of music and nakedness and mud and free thinking and make love, not war. People were taking psychedelics and expanding their consciousness, and even though the establishment made sure that they shut those hippies down hard and fast after this, I still believe, and it's even talked about in Dolores Cannon's book, the Three Waves of Volunteers, that those hippies, they were planting seeds for people to start to think for themselves. It started a movement, Timothy Leary's and the Alan Watts were out there teaching people to start to look at things from a different perspective and question those narratives from the news and the magazines and your parents and grandparents and people. It started to pave the way for those questions about what is real. And no, the hippie movement didn't invent the fake moon landing theory, because there is one, but it created this cultural awakening. People were just buck the system. They didn't want to go, it was people that were just dealing with a lot. Vietnam, the Cold War had been brewing for God knows, since forever, it seemed to those people. This awakening was going through where they were starting to question that authority. It became kind of the default setting for an entire generation of the 60s, because most people in that era at that time hadn't questioned, how they lived or the way that things were done. People believed that truth came from institutions. And when NASA said we went to the moon, we believed it. And, I think there was some truth to the research that, was put out there. It was incredible. It was historic. It was a moment in time, but it was also strategic. It was about beating the Russians. It was about being first. It was about planting a flag on the moon. It was outward. It was, action-based proving, achieving, and that energy matters, because over time, that certainty started to crack. People started asking questions, I don't know about that. Those questions have lingered and recirculated and been the topic of many documentary and many conversations about what actually happened. You've got all kinds of stuff that people have talked about. And as the years started to roll by, you know, there those people that were told that watched that thought originally, this is what happened, that certainty began to kind of glitch in the matrix. People started looking closer at the photographs. They started asking, why were those shadows? Why did they not line up? Or, why is there how could a flag ripple in a vacuum? And for the first time, that hive mind way of thinking started to crack. And we went from a world where everyone looked at the same moon landing to a world where we started wondering if we were actually, even looking at the moon, the actual moon, or a soundstage in Nevada. And that trust that defined 1969 just didn't fade. It began to transform into this deep underlying skepticism that defines us today. I think that's where the original conspiracy theorists formed, was from that moon landing. Did we actually land on the moon the way we were told? Was some of that footage recreated? Was it a set? Was Stanley Kubrick involved? He directed 2001 Space Odyssey, had every, advantage, everything that to make you think it was space. So that's what a lot of people started. And then there was some supposed deathbed confession about it. And you can go down that rabbit hole if you like. I did. And one of the main things that really stuck out to me was after they had gotten back, they'd gotten back and they went into this 21-day quarantine. And I guess they were making sure everybody was good, taking care of their health and whatnot. And also, maybe they were feeding them what they needed to tell the American public. Because if you looked after that 21 days, they did this major press conference. And again, the world was huddled around their TVs watching, the press conference. And I want you to really hear me when I say this, because I'm not going to tell you what's true or not true. But I am going to say, go watch that press conference. If you've never seen it, I wasn't alive in 1969. I was born in 73. But I looked back at it, I didn't watch it then. And I don't think I'd ever watched it, but it was a point of controversy. So I went and watched it. And I'm going to tell you this, just watch it, because something about it feels heavy. And I don't know, maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's everything, because when you think about it, when you watch them, they looked sus. They looked like they were really struggling for some reason. I don't know what it was. But we went to the moon, and then we stopped for 50 years. We just didn't go back. Well, we did that. We're good. Because it doesn't, that doesn't make any sense. We didn't go back for 50 years, and we're supposed to think that we actually did it. So I don't know. Humanity's not like that. Especially the United States is not like that. We don't accomplish something that big and that huge and just walk away from it. It took the Wright brothers. They created airplanes, and then 40 years later there were jet engines flying people all over the world. So you can't convince me that we went to the moon and then we didn't go back for 55 years. I don't think that's plausible. So anyway, we should have built on it. We should have, expanded. We should have built on that momentum. We should have gone further. So, that's the thing. Why didn't we? And I don't have that specific answer, but I think it's a fair question to ask. And I also think maybe we did. Maybe we actually did. They just didn't tell us about it. I don't know. That's just a thought. So fast forward to now. Here we are. 2026. We're living in the future, right? When you were a kid, you thought 2026 sounds like, God, we're going to be having flying cars and, anything. Anyway, but so here we are. We're going back this time. And I was standing on the beach and I was super excited. And I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to tell us, they're going to show us, they're going to be real this time. And I still am holding out for that. But this time, the mission isn't Apollo, as it was then. It was named the Apollo mission, Apollo 11. This time, it's called Artemis. And I didn't really know anything about, those names. So that was part of one of the things that I wanted to look into. When I looked into it, I realized that is not random at all. It is based on Greek mythology. And when you look at Greek mythology and the story of Apollo and Artemis, they were twins, and they represent two completely different energies. Is it ironic that Apollo represents the sun and power and getting stuff done and being the ultimate warrior, and Artemis represents the moon? She's representative of the moon. And she's also representative of awareness and expansion and consciousness and expansion. And I just was blown away when I saw that. And I was like, oh, so they've been planning this for 55 years? That's just so strange. It's just so strange to me. So anyway, I thought, because I didn't really know the story, I thought, well, I'll go back and I'll just read the story of Artemis and Apollo and see what they're about and see if it makes even more sense just based on more than just the fact that they represent the sun and the moon, right? So I thought I'd take you guys into a little story time today. We're going to do a little mythology lesson here, just real quick, so that you know the story of Artemis and Apollo in case you didn't. Okay, so mythology with Sheila Say. Myths with Sheila. Okay, here we are. So here's the tea. Zeus is the king of the gods, and he has an affair with a woman named Leto. She ends up pregnant with twins, and of course, right, Zeus's wife, Hera, who's the queen of holding a grudge, is absolutely livid. She's pissed, and she doesn't just get mad, she's pissed. So she issues a divine decree, and Leto is forbidden from giving birth on any solid ground or under the sun. So basically, she just tries to cancel Leto's right to exist, and maybe she'll die. And it gets worse because she's trying to make sure she freaking dies, because Hera then sends this terrifying giant serpent called the Python to hunt Leto down while she's in labor. Like, what a bitch, right? She does not care at all. So picture this. Leto is wandering the world, exhausted. She's in labor. She's being chased by a monster. She's in pain. And every place that she goes, they're turning her away. They're scared of Hera's wrath. So finally, she finds this little outcrop of land called Delos. Now, Delos was a floating island. It wasn't anchored to the ocean floor. So technically, it was like a loophole. And that's where the magic happens. Artemis is born first. And she doesn't just show up and cry like a normal newborn. She literally hits the ground running. Even as a newborn, she steps up and acts as a midwife for her mother, helping her to go through another 9 days of labor. And she finally delivers her twin brother, Apollo. Right there, right then and there, Artemis decides, I'm going to ask Dad, good old Dad, about giving me something in return for me helping Leto, my mother. So she makes her move. She asks Zeus for eternal maidenhood, basically saying, I don't need a man, and I'm not playing the traditional games. She becomes the protector, the goddess of the hunt, and the one who watches over the vulnerable and the young. And I don't think that we can overlook the timing of that. So I want you to put a pin in that for a second, because there's something worth mentioning there about Artemis and being the protector of the young. But first, let's keep going and continue with Apollo. So then you have Apollo. He comes out as the golden boy, the god of the sun, the light, the music, the logic. He's the one who eventually slays that python, and he takes all the glory. He's the action. In mythology, he's the god of distance and the golden mean. He's the archer who hits the bullseye from a mile away. He doesn't just arrive, he conquers. And doesn't that just describe the 1969 moon mission? It was about that. It was about that, hitting that one specific target. It was about beating the Russians and planting that flag and proving a point to the entire world. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I always burp or cough or something when I'm trying to do this, but I'm a human being. So, anyway, where are we? Artemis. She was the awareness that even made his birth possible. She was the one, who helped her mother, the one who survived the hunt during that time, and held the space when the world was literally trying to stop her from, delivering her brother. She's the protector of the vulnerable. And when I realized that that is the name of this mission in 2026, it makes me wonder if we're finally moving past that Apollo era of just doing things for glory and into the Artemis era of finally protecting, the truth. And remember when I said that I wanted to come back to something else that kind of struck me as very interesting about this era, this Artemis era? Well, it's this. Right now, as the mission named Artemis just returned from this 10-day groundbreaking mission around the dark side of the moon, a new age is launching. Look at what's happening in our world. We right now are in this moment where a lot of incredibly uncomfortable truths, specifically about the abuse and exploitation of children, are finally being dragged into the light. It feels like we're moving through this massive transition. The darkness and the hidden secrets that were swept under the rug for decades, they're being hunted down now. We're seeing this shift from looking the other way to a time of radical accountability. That is the energy of the huntress. She doesn't just sit back. She tracks. She finds what's been concealed in the wilderness and she brings it out into the open. So maybe this Artemis era, as I'm calling it, isn't just about a rocket in the sky and did we land on the moon? Maybe it's about a frequency shift down here on Earth where the protector energy is finally taking the lead. And the things that are done in the dark are finally meeting that full moon exposure. Because guess what? It was launched on the full moon too, which full moons are always about illumination. Full moons are about seeing things and bringing things out into the open. The light of truth, baby. That is the key because, the moon doesn't just illuminate the shadows, it pulls the tides. It governs the cycles, women's cycles. The moon has an effect, a very profound effect. It has an effect on our gravitational pull. Everything about the way we live on this planet is affected by the moon. And Artemis is the representative of the moon. So I think we're coming out of this time, and it makes sense. It just makes sense. When we went in 1969, we went under the banner of Apollo, son of action, logic, doing. It was physical conquest. But right now, this time, this Artemis, intuition and awareness. It feels like we're not just repeating history. It feels like to me that we're bringing this full circle. And when I was standing there and it made me cry, it's because I felt like we, you know, Apollo was like this outward journey of the human ego, but I felt like I could feel it. I could feel the energy, this Artemis energy. It's the inward journey of a human of human ascension. We're not the same people, who huddled around and watched those grainy black and white TVs in 1969. It's not just the technology that's changed. We are the technology. We're realizing that we are so much more than we were then. We've changed. We've spent the last 55 years in the wilderness. And now we are collectively vibrating at a different frequency. We're in a period right now where everything feels like it's shifting. And the reason why it feels that way is because it is. You hear people talking about the age of Aquarius. I always thought that was the funniest sounding song when I was little. I'd sing it for you, but I'm not gonna. But I know that kind of sounds like an abstract thing, the age of Aquarius, but you know what? It's not, because if you really break it down, it's just describing a shift in consciousness. The age of Aquarius isn't a song. The age of Aquarius is a real thing, and we're getting ready to actually enter into it. It's based on astrology and cycles of time, and we are coming out of this time called the age of Pisces. And what I like to do is I like to bring things out into the open, and then I just say, go see what you think about it. I'm not going to tell you what to think, but we are coming into this time called the Age of Aquarius, and it's not just a song. It's about a shift in consciousness. It's about an elevation, a shift from control to connection, from being told what to believe, literally, to actually thinking for yourself and being okay with discerning what I think about it, giving me the facts and letting me figure it out for myself. I don't need to look outside of myself for answers. I just bit my tongue. For answers, because maybe those answers are already inside of you, and all you have to do is go, what do I think about it? And when I think about that song, this is the dawning of, the song. It sounded wild back then. It sounded like this hopeful, euphoric idea, like something that might happen someday. And now we're living in it. We're living through that transition. And sidebar, the thing that cracked me up is the song was sung by a group called the Fifth Dimension. Sometimes it gets weirder and weirder. The more you look at symbology and you look at the name of things and you look at history, and my gosh, really? The Fifth Dimension, the Age of Aquarius, they were telling us that we're following this journey, this story, and they're telling us with the names of the missions on to the moon, and they're telling us with little things in movies, and it's just crazy. Just open your eyes. Just ask yourself, what do I feel about it? And one of the other things that I thought was really weird, and I wanted to I wonder if that means something too. It was launched on April Fool's Day, April 1st. You look at that date and you're like, ha, good one, NASA. Are they playing a joke on us? Are they putting it in our face? Are they saying we're going to launch this on April Fool's Day, and these fools are going to believe that we're actually doing it, and we're going to give them fake footage again, and we're going to, and there my mind was going in circles like, is that what's happening? Is it some sinister joke being played on us? And I don't think so. I think it was specifically on that date because historically, April 1st, end of March, was the new year. And, so how did we get to the fact that now we celebrate our new year in January, right? We'll talk about that. But yeah, so I think it was symbolic that they set this launch off on April 1st because that symbolizes the new year, new beginnings, right? New beginnings. Not only that, it was the spring equinox, or those were, if you look back at history, like that was a time that was greatly important to culture. So we ended up somehow getting into the middle of winter for our new year. So I went back and I was like, let me see what's going on here. So we've done mythology. Now let's do quick history chat, right? Quick history with Sheila Say. Back in the day, the new year did not start in January. It started in late March, aligned with the spring equinox, the actual rebirth of the earth. You look back at like the time of Stonehenge and even the pyramids and other, megalithic structures across the world. They were all, this time of year was very, very important. And it was a rebirth of Earth. Man, did you just hear what I said? The rebirth of Earth. New Earth. It is just like, the more I looked, the symbology just came out and smacked me across the face every time. So I looked, let's find out why it was changed. So in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII decided he was going to change the calendar. He literally deleted just 10 days from existence to fix some math error or whatever from Julius Caesar. And then we moved the new year to January the 1st. And the people, they were told, this is the new year, you better observe it, that's the way we're going. All right? So get the memo. But those who didn't get the memo, because I guess in those days, news didn't travel very fast. And then also there were people that were like, no, this is our tradition. This is based on our religious observance of this time of year. So they kept observing and doing their celebrations and rituals, following the natural cycles of Earth, right? And they kept celebrating on April 1st because they knew the truth. They knew better. But the modern world that was told, nope, we're doing it in January now. They were they were like, you guys are fools. It was the original way to cancel anybody who didn't follow the new narrative. If you stayed connected to the natural rhythm of the stars and the seasons instead of the new man-made clock, you were made out to be a joke. Sound familiar? And that is the pattern that we're still seeing today. You stay in line, or you get labeled a fool. So those people that were observing what they had always done were considered April fools. They were fools. Well, I think the fools are the ones who know what's really up. So anyway, they were the ones that saw the truth. And I think that when I'm, to bring this full circle, I think that the mission being on April 1st is symbolic of new beginnings, the birth of the new earth. And so now here we are, they came back a couple of days ago. I watched their capsule come down at 26,000 miles an hour or something like that. I was like, holy shit. How are they going to hit the Pacific Ocean and not die? And they had like 3 parachutes that came out, and I ended up, I kind of got really nervous because as I was watching it, somehow I kept seeing flames, what looked like flames come out. And I was like, oh my God, is it going so fast it's going to burst into flames? And I don't know, I guess everybody thought that was fine and no one said anything on the broadcast. So I was like, I guess that's normal. And then they shortly after landed in the water. And then I got anxiety because I kept wanting them to come out and they couldn't get connection. I was like, man, this is just weird. It weirded me out. I had so much anxiety about it. But at the same time, I clapped and I was just into it. I was like, this is just freaking historic. And then I was watching all the comments. And what I was talking about before about how it's become our default way of thinking to be just cynical and skeptical. And I get it. Our world has been defined by lies and false narratives and Like we're all waking up. This great awakening is causing us to all wake up, and we all kind of just feel like we're, in the Truman Show. And I completely get why people in the comments were like, this is fake. And, they were just making their own judgments about what was going on. But I really just want to say that regardless of whether they released all of the information, live, because a lot of people are caught up in that, I really think that there's a reason for it all to have happened the way that it has happened and will continue to happen. And it makes me start thinking about what's next. Okay, they're back now, but what happens next? Is this just, another mission and then we don't do anything with it? Or is this the beginning of something bigger? Because it really is a threshold moment. It feels like a doorway. And I don't know exactly to what, but I did hear them talk about how their mission is to go back again. They're going to go back this time and land. They do have planned missions to go back. They have, and then that's going to take us into Mars because there are missions to Mars already planned. So it is a doorway we've just stepped through. It's something more exploration, more transparency, more truth, and maybe this is even about the big D word, y'all, disclosure. Okay? It's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. We had, over the last 4 years since COVID, we've had more and more UAP sightings, orbs. They were calling them the Dior bags there for a while. It was very common on the East Coast in New Jersey. There were drones, then they called them drones, and nobody knew where they were coming from. Chris Bledsoe, I had a podcast where I talked about the Chris Bledsoe story, his book UFO of God. But I think it's already being talked about more openly ever before, and I think this is connected. I think this is part of that unfolding. I don't know, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like we're being prepared for something, that this mission is about, okay, we're going to go up. We're not going to just boom, blow the doors off of everybody's face saying this is what we saw on the moon. We're going to release it gradually, a little bit at a time. That's how we have to be spoon-fed in order to not freak out and think we're being invaded. We're being prepared for it. And maybe the difference this time is that we're actually ready to hear it. All of this stuff that's happened over the last 5 years has prepared us mentally to receive this information. And I don't think there's many people that just sit around and go, nope, we're the only thing in the whole entire universe that exists that's sentient life. I mean, you have to be really kind of thick to still think that. We're talking about truth and transparency. And truth and transparency, we have to talk about the elephant in the room then. Or maybe the alien in the room. I'm good. I want you to really think back to that 1969 press conference I told you to watch. And if you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. Look at their faces. Read some of the testimony after the fact from those Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and the astronauts that were up there. I don't know if you've seen it, but if you look at it, these were 3 men who had just done the impossible. They literally left the planet and walked on the moon. You would think that they would be excited and jubilant and beaming and, victorious and telling all the stories, but they weren't, dude. They were looking like they were heavy. They felt something heavy, like they were carrying a secret that was weighing them down, like they were just trying to keep themselves from saying the thing. And you have to ask yourself, were they under strict orders not to talk about something more? Something that they saw there that didn't fit the official mission plan? We've moved into a reality where whistleblowers are testifying before Congress under oath. We have former intelligence officers like David Grush coming forward about non-human craft. We have classified or declassified now CIA and Pentagon documents that aren't just theories anymore. They're spilling the beans. And all you have to do is search out the information. There is a paper trail now of a real reality that we've been told to ignore for 55 years. So, if Artemis is the protector of the truth, maybe she's also the one who finally pulls back that curtain on our neighbors. Maybe the reason that we stopped for 55 years wasn't because we lost interest or ran out of money, but because we were told, you need to stay away until you're ready. And maybe it's about humanity being read in to a much bigger story where we're not alone, and we never were. And we don't have to be afraid of the dark anymore, because once the truth is out, there's no putting it back in the box. And honestly, I think that we're finally ready to see what's in the box. I know I am. And at the same time, I also know that, if I'm being honest with myself, it does have to be spoon-fed to me, because as much as I'm into this stuff, if an alien ship landed in my backyard and I saw people coming out of it or alien-looking things coming out of it, it would freak me out, I think. And I tell myself that all the time, like, prepare yourself. You never know how it could happen. But, so, and then I think about the people who were like, this is fake, and, in that energy. And I just, instead of picking it apart, instead of dissecting it and hunting for all the glitches and, this isn't right, or why'd they say that, or this didn't float right, and instead of falling back into that old, heavy skepticism, what if we just allowed ourselves to feel like this is true? Like what I've talked about is what's really happening. I keep coming back to me standing on the beach and feeling that energy and watching that rocket pierce the sky. And I realized, then that this isn't just about a machine going to a moon. It's about humanity and how we've spent 55 freaking years in the dark, and finally we're going to be able to get some information. We don't have all the answers yet. Give it time. Maybe the answers, will come. And maybe they're not even the point right now. Maybe the point is that we're asking better questions. We're expecting more. We're demanding more information. We're more aware. We're more open, now than we've ever been before. We're standing on the threshold of a new era, a new time, the golden age of love. The new earth is taking shape. That's the energy. That's what I want to tap into. That's what I want people to embrace. That is what creates our reality, that energy. If you put out skepticism and, and just if you stay in that vibration of, then that's what you're going to get. But if we collectively jump on this train of, yes, this is where we're going, this is what's happening, then we're going back to the moon, then we realize that we're a different people than we were in 1969. And we're, remembering the truth. And this time, we're ready to see who has been waiting for us all this time. That's what I think. I think that ultimately, this was a doorway that just opened up for humanity to realize that there's a bigger story here. And we're about to start realizing it. We're about to start getting information. We're about to start meeting, our brothers and sisters in the galactic realm and the interdimensional beings that have historically been talked about, from the indigenous cultures of the Hopi, the African tribe, what's their name? The Dogon tribe in Africa that says that we came from the stars, and they knew about Sirius C before, and they carved it into their petroglyphs, and this is thousands and thousands of years before modern technology would have had telescopes, and they have a whole creation story of their culture, and they came from Sirius C, which isn't even visible. How'd they even know it was there? So come on, let's start talking about this stuff. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to mean that, oh, they're going to come and suck our brains out of our head. It's just, let's enlighten ourselves. Let's bring ourselves into the new age. Let's embrace it, okay? And see how powerful and how amazing and how evolved we can become. And then we can become galactic citizens. And, some are calling it the new Star Trek age. I admit it, I'm a Trekkie. And, going further than we've ever been before sounds amazing to me. So anyway, this was my deep dive on the moon and what I've been feeling about it. And I would like to hear what your thoughts are. Do you think I'm full of crap? You can feel free. Tell me you think I'm full of crap. It's fine. I just want to have a conversation about it. If you think I'm on the right track, tell me your experience. Have you had any experiences? This is the kind of stuff that lights me up. So if this episode hit a nerve, or if you've been feeling a shift in your own life, please, I want to hear from you. Subscribe, leave a comment, and let's keep this conversation expanding. The light is returning, and the door is wide freaking open. And as always, stay open, stay grounded, and keep your dial tuned to love. This is Earth School Radio. See ya!